Hello, good morning, good afternoon. This is Ute Jungerman speaking from the WBCSD. Thank you very much for connecting to today's SDG Deep Dive webinar. It's the first that we're organizing of a series this year. So, yes, I said my name is Ute Jungerman. I'm a manager here at the WBCSD in the SDGs team. And let me quickly take you through today's agenda. I'll be covering some of the introductory remarks and housekeeping items and give a short overview of the WBCSD's People Program and SDGs project area. And then I'll be passing on the microphone to our presenters. We're very fortunate today to have three outstanding women with us to share their perspectives and insights on the SDGs. So thank you, Jessica, Sophie, and Lorraine for being with us today, and we're excited to hear your thoughts. Perspectives later on. We want to keep this webinar interactive, so we do our best to allow for questions and discussion throughout and later on. I'm just getting a message that the audio is not so good. Just a second. I hope you can hear me okay. Please do let me know if there is an issue. We do our best to manage all the technical glitches that are on our way to this session. So again, welcome to today's webinar. It's the first of a series of webinars we're running this year. With these webinars, we aim to advance the conversation and business understanding around this very dynamic SDG agenda. We will have a combination of WBCSD company staff, external experts, and partners with us to share perspective, insights, and recommendations. We're planning these webinars either with a regional, topical, or SDG-specific focus. And regional means North America, Asia, or India, or any other region. And topical can be either investing in reporting or, for instance, SDGs and human rights. And SDG specific can be, for instance, looking at one particular SDG, like we're planning in March on the SDG 6 on water and sanitation. It's very much a work in progress. It's a draft schedule, but we're very open to suggestions and ideas from you, so don't hesitate to contact us. Okay, I do get more messages now that the line is very bad, so do please bear with me and we will try to connect differently. Okay, I hope you can hear me better now.
That's much better, Ita.
Okay. Okay, great. I'm not going to repeat just what I said, but basically this is just the first webinar of many that we're planning this year. We'll have different focus areas, and you see a planned sort of high-level schedule that we've sketched out for the rest of the year. But if you have any suggestions, please do come back to us with suggestions. Okay, so just a few housekeeping items. We're recording this webinar. Participants, you should be all muted at this point in time, but you probably know this function. You can wave your hand and we can try to unmute your line, or you can use the question or chat function to reach us, which you have already done on the sound, so thanks very much. Okay, let me just take a bit the temperature in the room before we get started on a couple of the resources we have available on the SDGs. I'm just going to pull up some polling questions, and I hope you can just answer them while you see them on the screen. You can just click. So, have you already visited and used our online SDG hub? Yes, no, first time I hear about it. Giving people a second or so to vote. Okay. Okay, so we have the results in. It's 55% who have heard about it and have used it. 18 no, and first time I hear about it. So we definitely need to spread the word further. So thanks a lot for answering, honestly. That's very, very helpful. Let me ask you another question. And I'm sorry, I'm still getting used again to this technology. I haven't used it in a while. So, do you receive and read our SDG bi-monthly briefings? Yes, no, first time I hear about it. Okay. Close and share. There we go. So, 29% receive and read it. 38% of you say you don't receive or read them, and again, about 33% that hear about this the first time. So I guess we do need to do a little better in improving our distribution channels and getting this information out to you. And last question for now, but I guess I don't know how useful it will be. So, have you found these resources generally useful? So I guess it's just a few of you that already have used them. Okay. 1 or 2 more seconds. Okay, I'm closing now, and I'll share the results. So at least those of you who have used them already or read them found them useful, the white majority. That's good to know. And then we certainly can improve, and we want to improve, and to some degree. So that's very, very useful information. But I think the key message we need to take away is that we need to do better in actually making sure you're aware of what we have at your disposal. So that's very helpful. Thank you. Okay, now coming back to the actual presentation. So allow me to just give you a brief overview of our people program and our SDG work. You've probably seen this slide before and over the last few months. So the people program is one of WBCSD's 5 programs, and the SDG work that we do sits within the people program. The people program, within the program, we drive business action and solutions in 3 key areas: SDGs, social impact, which includes human rights and the future of jobs, for example, and sustainable lifestyles. The team that supports the SDGs are James and I. James is dialing in from London today, and myself here today out of Geneva. There are 4 big mega trends that are really driving and shaping our work within the people program. The first is really a world that wants to work, a world that is on the move, a world that is increasingly polarizing, a world that needs to work, and a world that is widely living beyond its means. We think generally that the SDGs within this context actually provide a very compelling framework to address these global trends. The SDGs are not a business as usual agenda. They're very much transformational, ambitious, interconnected, and universal. And we do know that the SDGs will not be delivered without a significant contribution from business. And there are a couple of examples in which business can really contribute to this agenda, either as an engine of economic growth and employment, a driver of innovation and technology, as well as a source of finance. Within our SDGs work, we have 3 key focus areas. The first is that we want to add value to our members and our global network partners by advancing the conversation and increasing the business understanding around the 2030 agenda. We want to give business a voice in this very busy landscape around the SDGs. And we want to bring sectors together to collaborate and articulate a common vision on the SDGs by developing sector roadmaps. I'll give very quick examples of each of these. So by advancing the conversation, well, we use the SDG Business Hub. We've done a CEO guide. We consolidate reports and research. We disseminate that through our bi-monthly briefings. And now we're doing these webinars throughout the year, but also at a higher level we've done, and we continue to do C-suite dialogues and try to also organize other type of events, just to give a few examples. A couple of examples of how we have been giving business a voice in this space by positioning WBCSD content and members at certain events and platforms, such as the SDG Business Forum as part of the high-level political forum at the United Nations. Peter Backer has been traveling around the world, meeting CEOs across the world, talking at CEO roundtables. We had very busy events at last year's UN-DESA forum at the high-level political forum in New York. And we had a very busy session as well at our council meeting in New York, which definitely shows there's great interest in this space. Our bi-monthly briefings go to more than 400 individuals. And while the Business Hub is one of the most visited websites within the WBCSD microsite space. So collaboration for impact. We have been working together with ERM on developing road mapping guidelines as to how you can actually develop a sector roadmap, enabling sectors within our membership to articulate a common vision and outline tangible actions as to how their industry can maximize their potential and contribute to the SDGs. These guidelines are expected to be released in the first quarter of this year, and in parallel, these companies that you see on the screen from the chemical sector have actually piloted these guidelines, or are piloting these guidelines and developing their chemical sector SDG roadmap. And we're in similar conversations with members from the Forest Solutions Group here at WBCSD, but also the cement sector companies we have in our membership. So it's an exciting space. I don't want to talk too much. I do want to give the space to our presenters, but I just want to give some food for thought. You might have seen that PwC has recently released its SDG reporting challenge, which summarizes a recent research which evaluates the business world's commitment to the SDGs and some of the tangible actions companies are taking to meet the SDGs. And well, they found that 62% of companies are mentioning the SDGs in their reporting, but only 37 have actually prioritized individual SDGs. 25% discuss the goals in general terms, and another number I'll throw out is that actually 38 of the companies that they have analyzed don't mention the goals at all. So there's still quite a lot of work to do. And just recently, actually a few weeks ago, Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, one of the largest institutional investors, issued an annual letter to CEOs emphasizing the need for companies to respond to broader societal challenges, serve a social purpose, contribute positively to society. And he suggested that companies must manage their environmental impact and adapt to technological change. He didn't mention the SDGs specifically, but we may argue that the SDGs actually provide the framework to address some of these recommendations. So just that as food for thought. I'll pause here and now pass over the microphone to Jessica Espe, Senior Advisor to the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, who will be talking us through what they're doing in the United States. We'll then hear from Sophie Beckham, Senior Manager, Natural Capital Stewardship at International Paper Company, and Lorraine Francourt from the Dow Chemical Company, taking us through a little bit what they're doing and how the SDGs are helping in the work that they're doing. So with this, I do need to switch slides, so bear with me just a second. Okay, I'll make. Jessica, if you could unmute your line, and then you should be able to present now.
Great, thank you. I'll just check I have presentation abilities. Okay, great. Hi, good morning or good afternoon or evening to everyone on the line. It's a real pleasure to be with you all to join this really interesting webinar. And huge thanks to WBCSD for joining us today and for organising this and for convening such an interesting discussion, I think, on the situation of the SDGs and how we're tackling implementation of the SDGs in the USA. I should probably preface my presentation by saying that I think the angle for my presentation is probably a little bit broader than the subsequent presenters. I work with the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, and we are working with a really wide range of actors, public and private actors. But first and foremost, probably governments, national and local governments, to try and support them in the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. And as such, I'm going to focus a little bit on the kind of politics of where we are right now in the USA in implementing this ambitious agenda. So, sorry, forgive me while I try. Here we go. So I just wanted to start with some, broad context. I think everyone probably knows this very well, but I think it's fair to say the US is facing a very acute sustainability crisis. Here are just some interesting statistics and rankings from SDSN's recent SDG Global Index report, which you can find. I'm providing the links to all the documents I refer to today at the end of this PowerPoint, but it's available online, where we looked at different dimensions of the Sustainable Development Goals and how different countries around the world were faring on the SDGs overall. And suffice to say that America is really at the bottom of the pile when compared against other exempted and high-income countries. Here's just a few examples. If you look at inequality, for example, just an exemplary statistic, there are now 540 billionaires in the United States with a combined net worth of $2.399 trillion. Conversely, there are 43 million people, or close to 14% of the US population, living below the national poverty line. So we're really at a sort of acute stage of gross inequality within this country. I think the other thing we hear about regularly in the news is, of course, the struggles with the health system here. And I think that's reflected in the life expectancy statistics you can see in front of you. Just again, by way of example, 65% of American adults are now considered to be severely overweight or obese, according to the CDC. 20.5 million Americans have a substance abuse disorder. And if you look at something as basic and essential as maternal mortality, which is one of the key indicators within the Sustainable Development Goals, the OECD average for maternal mortality rate is 14 deaths per 100,000 live births. In America, the rate is 24 deaths per 100,000 live births. So it's really a sort of shocking social and ecological crisis ahead of the United States. Just trying to click on. Sorry, 1 second. There we go. Oh, try again. There we go. So it's within that political context that President Obama and Secretary of State John Kerry endorsed the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015. And the US government, until that point, had been really actively involved in their negotiation, recognizing that we needed a new vision for sustainable development for the world. And it needed to be something that would resonate here in the United States with American citizenry. And so President Obama, John Podesta, one of his advisors, and John Kerry were deeply involved in the negotiations for close to 4 years. Now, I suppose the silver lining is that fortunately President Trump has not actively denounced the SDGs, and in fact he has referred to them once or twice in a couple of public presentations. But I think everyone can see that the government is sort of actively undermining many of the core concepts of sustainable development through the active encouragement of investment in fossil fuels, by reducing protected natural ecosystems and so on. Some of the bureaucrats within federal government are really still trying to push this forward, and they're doing so under the radar. And, fortunately, we've seen some positive steps forward. Things like there is now a national reporting platform, which is a standardized national system for reporting on the SDGs for local governments, for the federal government, for different ministries. And they're hoping to also broaden it out to invite private companies to also join in. And then there's been support for other data initiatives that are seeking to improve the quality of the information available to monitor sustainable development. So those are positive steps forward, but they are very much under the radar, and we're not seeing the level of political engagement and commitment that we had hoped for previously. But fortunately, subnational actors are really stepping up to the plate. And And that's hugely powerful because mayors have the power to really affect change for a vast percentage of the population and over a very large sort of environmental context of the country. So 62.7% of the US population now live in cities, and they account for approximately 70% of GHG emissions. And if you look in different cities across the US, the average on average, 20.9% of city residents live in poverty. So these are really kind of the hubs for where many of these sustainable development issues are taking place. And with actions at that level, we can see a really profound change. Unfortunately, as I said, many mayors are really, really engaging with this and seeing this as a unique opportunity to kind of step in where Washington is not leading. And we've seen some really rousing speeches recently from various mayors, from the governor of California, Jerry Brown, and various others, sort of calling on subnational actors, state level actors and city level leaders to really sort of fill the gap. So here we can just see a couple of images of some of the climate convenings that mayors have pulled together in response to Trump stepping out of the Paris commitment. And those are a couple of different convenings in different parts of the country in the top two photographs. And then at the bottom, this is mayors going a step further. This was in 2015 when mayors from around the world and a large number of American mayors came together at the Vatican in July with Pope Francis. And then in New York, that's the picture on the right, at the same time as the SDG summit was being signed by heads of state of government, many came together to sign their own declaration of commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals. And so we're seeing a huge amount of momentum and political enthusiasm for this important agenda. And in fact, only last week, I was hosting an event at the US Conference of Mayors focusing on this very topic with really wide participation. So with all of that in mind, SDSN in 2015 launched an effort to support mayoral engagement with the SDGs called the Sustainable Cities Initiative. And we focused on 3 cities. The top right-hand city is San Jose in California, very close to the home of Silicon Valley. Bottom right is, of course, the iconic skyline of New York. And then the bottom left is Baltimore. And in each of them, we were really trying to sort of support government to think through what adoption of the SDGs might mean in their given context. And that's played out very differently in every single one of the cities. Oh, sorry. I don't know if... Thank you. That's great. Actually, is it possible to go back one slide, Uta? Sorry, I'm having real problems controlling the slides. Thank you. So in Baltimore, for example, there's been a real effort to try and think about what the goals actually mean at the local level. How do you localize the goals and make them feel contextually relevant for residents of Baltimore? And this is just a simple graphic that was done by one of the universities in Baltimore in order to engage different citizens in the conversation about the relevance of the goals in the city. On the next slide, sorry, thanks, Uta. This is an exercise that was done in New York. New York has a very ambitious sustainable development plan covering a very broad range of social, economic and environmental issues called One NYC that was developed at the same time as the SDGs were being negotiated. But to try and align these two processes, they set about looking at how the different visions of the One NYC exercise aligned with different goals. And they have now attempted to try and align their monitoring indicators as well, so that we can have a really sort of systematic tracking of how New York is performing on the Sustainable Development Goals. And then on the next slide, this is an exercise from Baltimore again, where we're seeing, and a similar exercise was conducted in San Jose, where a slightly more technical approach was used, and city council members and university partners across the city decided to try and engage different residents and local communities to discuss the relevance of the SDGs for them and to use them to help to ask residents, what are the indicators and targets that are most important to you? And they did a sort of public consultation on different indicators to try and come up with a priority set of activities for the city of Baltimore and to make sure that those were aligned with the SDG framework. So this is just a quick snapshot of one of the exercises that we conducted there with local residents. And then in addition to this kind of city level in-depth action that we're seeing very much led by mayors, by local universities, by local civil society groups and by residents, there's also a big effort going on right now amongst lots of NGOs and think tanks and universities across the country to try and develop public tools that can help to sort of galvanize more action with different cities across the United States. And last year, SDSN, who I work with, we released our first SDG Cities Index, having a go at tracking the performance of cities across the United States on the Sustainable Development Goals. We ended up looking at the 100 different regions, and we looked at metropolitan statistical regions. So that's sort of broad city environment, the greater city, if you will. And we ranked those 100 cities according to their performance on the different dimensions of sustainable development. This is a quick map that just shows you that we can see really acute challenges in the sort of traditional Rust Belt areas, in the Midwest and in the South, which is really just a reflection of very strong dependence on cars, very high GHG emissions, as well as some of the inequality challenges that we see in those parts of the country. And on the next slide, I'm just trying to click on again. Yeah, you can, this is, I don't expect anyone to be able to read this in detail right now, but I just wanted to show you that we did have a go at actually ranking those 100 cities and regions across the country. And that was hugely powerful for trying to get different US cities to sit up and take note. Off the back of this analysis and a lot of the public press that we received, we've had even stronger engagement from all of the top 20 to 40 cities that are performing very well on these different dimensions. But so too have we had commitment, as I've mentioned, from Baltimore, who are number 41. We've had a lot of interest from Tulsa, Oklahoma, who are 47. We've been engaging with Louisville, which is 90th on the index, and Detroit, that's 98th. So it's been a really sort of empowering process to try and get more cities across the United States to realize the relevance of this agenda for them, but also that they have the power to take action and to really affect considerable change in their localities. So I was told to keep this brief, so I'm going to wrap up here. But on the final slide, sorry, it seems to have just disappeared on us. I just wanted to leave you with some other interesting resources and more information on on this slide, thank you, on where you can find more information on the SDG process in the United States, some guidance on ways in which different cities are going about implementing the SDGs. That's available at the SDG Cities Guide. And then all of the rankings I've mentioned, as well as more information on our local efforts with different cities around the United States. And something I've not really dwelled on today, but I would love to come back to in the discussion is, how many of these cities are trying to partner with different private companies and local industry in order to get them more actively involved in this process and to bring them into the consultation with residents and different stakeholders. And I think there's a really brilliant opportunity for cities around the United States to do that. So I will leave it there and look forward to the ensuing discussion. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Jessica. Very great presentation. We will try to make this available to you later on. I'm sure there are a couple of questions now, but because of the technical glitches we're a bit behind time, and I do want to give enough room and time to our presenters to talk, and I hope we can come to some discussion just after everybody has presented. So don't hesitate to send in your questions, but we'll try to get to them later. So I'm just going to switch slides. Here we go. Sophie, over to you.
Great, thank you, Uta. Will you advance for me, or do you want me to do that?
Happy to, given that we had some issues, let me move. Maybe it's easier.
Perfect. Okay. Well, please let me know if the sound is not okay. Thank you, Uta and WBCSD for inviting me to participate today. I'm thrilled to be on a panel with esteemed colleagues. So very interested. I think it's a great segue from Jessica's presentation about sort of the state of SDG work and a look at the U.S. It's a great segue to have the opportunity to hear from a U.S.-based company. I work with International Paper. We're a global company, but our headquarters and the majority of our production is in the U.S. and certainly an interesting time from a regulatory perspective. So I'll comment on that as we go through the presentation, but I think kind of first and foremost, I just want to recognize something that Uta also mentioned, which is that we know that corporate action is really critical to the success of the SDGs, and we are at a point in time where a growing, really rapidly growing number of companies kind of understand that the global goals provide a pathway to new business opportunities. It's exciting to see the uptake and exciting to see some of the implementation. I want to speak a bit about our kind of journey to understand and incorporate the SDGs in the way that we're working, and maybe start by just putting a few questions in front of you that kind of emerged when we were evaluating our own global citizenship strategy through the lens of the SDGs. So how we sort of had to ask ourselves, how are the SDGs, how would they inform or align our global citizenship strategy? What have we learned from working with the SDGs over time? And why do we believe the SDGs are important to business and will continue to be? Next slide, please. So who is International Paper? We are one of the world's largest producers of fiber-based packaging, pulp, and paper. We are the company who makes the box that gets delivered to your doorstep, and most likely you're more excited about what's in the box than the box itself. But that's part of our largest product segment, and our vision along with those products is to be among the most successful, sustainable, and responsible company in the world. Our focus is really on strengthening our people and the communities where we live and work, using our resources, primarily our natural resources going into our products responsibly and efficiently, and ensuring our businesses are safe and successful and sustainable for generations to come. So that's a bit about our background. Interestingly, I think we're a more than 100-year-old company coming up on 120 years, and having survived and thrived through lots of political administrations, although the regulatory framework changes from time to time, our vision and our values has stood the test of time. And so I think we continue to operate on a global citizenship strategy that's goes beyond sort of political cycles and is connected to how we want to be a company for today and for the future. Next slide, please. Along those lines, in the last really 2 years, our commitment to sustainability has shifted from something we do to really embedding in how we operate every day. And anchoring this shift is our new, relatively new global citizenship strategy. It's called the IP Way Forward, and you can see here on the screen there are 5 strategic drivers which really build on our vision and help us execute to achieve that vision. We are sort of counting on this sustainability framework to guide us as we invest in people and planet going forward. Next slide, please. In thinking about this global citizenship strategy, which the origins of which predated the SDGs, we of course have to recognize, and probably this is a slide we could even add one more column to, that stakeholder expectations. And I speak of stakeholders as being everyone from our employees to our shareholders, to governments, to NGOs and other special interest groups. They've really evolved over the last several decades. And I would say today, the list could be much longer than what you see here on the right side of the screen. And I think that there are more and more expectations on the positive impact that companies and the private sector have the opportunity to create. So when we sort of thought through our global citizenship strategy and then connecting that to the SDGs, we sort of had to answer what problems are we trying to solve? Are we addressing the right issues? Where can we have the most impact, and are we doing enough? Next slide, please. So to find some of those answers, we looked at some of our past materiality surveys, and this is a 2016 materiality survey. It's really sort of the cream of the crop of issues, as you can see from the axis. It's kind of the upper right quadrant of the issues that rose to most importance. And we asked a lot of those stakeholders for their input, and we also drew on our existing sustainability goals, which were established in 2012. When we had our global citizenship strategy in hand, we then At that time, the SDGs came out, and we mapped those against the SDGs to better understand how to align and where our key focus areas and our global priorities were connected. This was mentioned a bit earlier. I think there's so many great tools right now with the SDGs. So our next step was really to take it down to the target level and closely examine the targets associated with each SDG to ensure we were really positioned to contribute to the goals that we prioritized in a measurable way. Next slide, please. So I think, kind of to the question of why are the SDGs important for international paper? I think we can all probably put our arms around the notion that the goals are a global framework, that, the world's materiality analysis, and they give us something as a touch point and a reference to evaluate and to think through our own current goals, which have a 2020 timeline, and our global citizenship initiatives. We could use some of those tools to map our own progress to delivering on certain goals that we think are material to our business and to our sector. And we see them as a mechanism to measure sort of how we're able to scale up our contributions through some of our external collaborations. Our conclusion was, after sort of doing this crosswalk, was that our ability to contribute to all of the goals, to all 17 of them, was probably diluted, and that we should rather focus on ones that we felt we could directly contribute to and then publicly report on progress. And so the highlighted elements of this slide, goals 2, 4, 6, 8, 12, 13, 15, and 17 are the ones that we've identified for the moment that we think we can really deliver on. It's certainly, this is not a static picture. We really understand that other goals may be more important to us in the future, and we can always reevaluate and prioritize those as well. Next slide, please. So one quick example, I won't take you through too much detail on this, but life on land, goal number 15, is really important to us. It's close to my heart. I'm a forester by education. And obviously, our entire business depends on the sustainability of forests. We are working in several dimensions, supporting forest ecosystems, keeping forest land forested, and maximizing our fiber use, recovery, and reuse. And one project that we have initiated in a collaboration with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation is called Forest Land Stewards. This was a project that was initiated in 2013. We're now in a second phase of the project, and some of the goals are around restoration and protection of critical habitats and wildlife communities. The really fantastic part of this project that I think is so relevant for the SDGs is that our investment, our initial $7.5 million investment, has generated almost $25 million in matching contributions. So the total conservation impact of this project in its first phase was closer to $32 million. We just think that that's the ideal outcome for any kind of collaboration that looks to scale. Next slide, please. So just a few quick notes on closing. This is a picture of our sort of sustainability throughout our value chain, and maybe a few things we've learned from working with the SDGs. We think there are tools here for the future. As I mentioned, not all the SDGs are relevant for our company today, but we know we can check and adjust those targets, and the beauty of that is that the SDGs can drive innovation, and we still have that strategic framework for delivering a globally relevant agenda. Additionally, I think we have uncovered some of our contributions. The SDGs gave us a way to express some of the work that we're already doing, and to think about how we can scale that up and add to it. And we report on that progress in our annual GRI report. And we will direct our 2018 materiality survey to incorporate the SDGs as well. I think finally the opportunity to collaborate in order to do sort of advanced problem solving on different issues. And our membership in the WBCSD Forest Solutions Group is a great example. In the early days of the SDGs, we, as a Forest Solutions Group, were able to look at some sector-specific KPIs to measure our performance against the SDGs. And what we see coming up next is referencing something Uta mentioned, which is that a forest sector guide, forest product sector guide, to really look at forests and forest products as a key to some global sustainability issues. And a roadmap connected to that will be extremely useful for our industry. So we're excited to see the development of that and work with UTA and WBCSD to drive that forward. Last slide, please. So just to wrap up, I think why we think the SDGs are going to continue to be important to business. I think there's a real call to action here, and you can hear it in the presentations on this panel and probably in every other presentation by public or private sector with respect to the SDGs. If nothing else, a global conversation has begun, and I think that that's extremely useful and allows individual actors to kind of reflect on potential contributions. Secondly, just the call to collaboration, and I think we really see we can get to scale when we're working in collaboration with other organizations who are like-minded and want to drive towards the same outcome. So I think I'll leave it there. I'm happy to take questions if there's time, and thanks again, Uta, for driving the slides for me.
Thank you, Sophie. I'm going to pass right over to Lorraine in the interest of time, and I hope we can come back to some conversation later on. So, Lorraine, over to you.
Thank you very much. This is Lorraine Francourt. I'm speaking to you from Dow's European headquarters in Horgen, which is near Zurich. And I'm really excited to spend a few minutes with you talking about our journey with our sustainability goals and how we link that to the SDGs and show our contribution to those global challenges. Let me see if I can drive the slides. I could earlier.
It should work, but let me. It always works when testing, and then it doesn't work when you need it.
Very strange, isn't it? So our sustainability goals, we have 7 that we are driving forward today. It's our third set of these global goals. All the background information is on our website, of course. And what we really are trying to do with this set of goals is, of course, to keep our focus on our own performance, so what we call our footprint in our world-leading operations goal. You can see here that remains a constant, and it's something that's delivered enormous success and value to us over the years. And also, of course, our products as they go into the market. And I should say that many of you might be thinking at the moment, well, this says Dow, and didn't Dow and DuPont just sort of do a merger? Well, as you probably know, the Dow-DuPont merger was a merger that was planned to be a divorce. So we are at the moment working through that plan, which is public, to further spin into an agricultural company, a specialties company, and what will be the future Dow. So I'm really speaking now on behalf of future Dow, current and future Dow, where these goals will continue to be a constant. And Dow is very much focused across many sectors of industry, including packaging and specialty plastic, industrial solutions, material, and consumer solutions. So when we talk about our product and the role that our goal has in bringing products to market in a sustainable manner with our partners, we can have a very strong influence. So if you go to the next slide, please. What we did with this, because I don't think I can move to the next slide. Are you moving?
I have moved it already. It's not appearing. Okay. Now I don't know what I can do. Try again. Maybe if you can just keep talking, and I'm going to try to figure this out on my side. Thank you.
Sure. And I want to tell everybody online that we did test this before this session and it worked perfectly. So very interesting. But what we found is that when we went through the process, as international paper described as well, to look at how our goals align with the Sustainable Development Goals, it was actually a process that we went through over a number of years, because groundbreaking goals, which we believe these are, don't appear overnight. And as we were developing our goals with a series of external back and forth with various stakeholders, external stakeholders, internal stakeholders, etc., the UN was developing the SDGs at the same time. So there was a lot of back and forth between the different partners, and I think we gained enormously from that process. And what I like about this map here is that it helps our businesses to see how our goals are positioned against the broader goals of the UN SDGs. So we are a global corporation. This puts us in a global picture together with the world's global challenges. But I would say that also for smaller organizations, it's a way to really look at where your niche could be, because everybody can contribute to these UN SDGs. And of course, all the contributions add up to the overall success. So this was a very enriching exercise for us that we went through to map our 7 goals against the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Next slide, please. What I've done, as that next slide builds, is I've just taken a few of these goals, not all of them, and just kind of shown you what we've done. I want to give some time for questions at the end for the presenters. So the blueprint goal is the one that says it all. What we want to do is develop a blueprint, and we deliberately call this out as being aligned to the SDGs to show the significance and relevance to these societal changes. And we have the first blueprint under ready for publication, which will be on water, and we're going to be publishing that on World Water Day, which is coming up in March. And what we're doing with our goals is showing where the alignment to the UN SDGs are. If you could go to the next slide. And again, all of this is on the website, so I won't go through it. But it shows the alignment. It shows how these topics that we've choosing will draw on the best practices of existing collaborations, and how we wish to forge new collaborations, because anybody who spends even 10 seconds looking at this topic realizes that no one entity can achieve things on their own. Next slide. Circular economy, this is one that's very close to my heart, as I'm the global leader for this, for the company. We recognize that this has a major alignment to the UN SDGs 9 and 12. So this is how we call them out in our literature and whenever I talk about that. And what's very helpful in circular economy and the SDGs is that, of course, our global businesses, they have their global business plans. So starting maybe at C-suite, you need the C-suite kind of vision and the leaders with the vision to achieve these societal changes. And then each of the global businesses, the business leaders are, they set the business plans, the business strategy. But what we found with the SDGs is it's very helpful to talking at the regional strategy and the local strategy where implementation actually happens. So working with country leaders, functional leaders, both in the company and of course externally to the company, it's been a very useful way in order to position where we want to go, what our intent is, and how we will know when we get there. So if you go to the next slide. We're developing partnerships, but I think that we can do more as well on the metrics for this, and that the UN SDGs are going to help us to do that. So next slide, please. Sorry, I'm rushing a little bit because in light of the technical difficulties that we had earlier, I want to try and get some time back for us. The final one I'm going to talk about is engaging for impact. This is one where we have a very strong focus on an individual's need for purpose. All of us have that need for purpose, and the Sustainable Development Goals really help us to broaden that beyond the company's horizon for each of our 50,000 plus employees who can really see their own individual purpose within all of this. It frankly has a huge impact as well on attraction of talent to our organization and retention. If you can go to the next slide. And what we've done is outline those and using the SDGs, aligning those to activities which are under those ones you saw previously on that slide. So that's, I think I've got one more slide just to conclude, just the last pretty picture at the end. But that's essentially, you know, in a very short nutshell, some of the highlights that we found working within the businesses globally and with other stakeholders, aligning what we're achieving with our groundbreaking sustainability goals, very much aligned to and assisted by and iterative with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine, for your presentation. I'm just going to go back. Please do use the question function to pose your questions or wave your hand. There is now a few minutes to discuss or ask questions. There was a question earlier from Rose Perkins for Jessica, whether you could actually share the criteria which you're using to rank the city. So maybe if the criteria you have been using is available in some of the materials that you have highlighted.
Hi there. Yeah, very happy to. Actually, it's all available on our website at unsdsn.org. You can download the full index and all of the underlying data and indicators. So it's all entirely visible there. So that's probably the easiest thing to do. I'll also put the link in the chat box.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions while people maybe think a little bit about it? Let me just throw something out there at either Lorraine or Sophie. How do you see, I mean, you're both very global, big companies, obviously both headquartered in the United States, but active almost everywhere in the world. Do you see the approach to the SDGs within your company being different depending on where your colleagues sit in the world?
This is Sophie. I can answer maybe in brief. I'd love to hear Lorraine's comments as well. I think on the national level, it's important to have that sort of lens to look at delivering on the SDGs. From a corporate perspective, I think we are aligned globally on those SDGs that we feel we are best placed to contribute to. So I would say that is globally sort of consistent, but I think that the ways in which we deliver and absolutely sort of the national level of what Jessica spoke about, localizing the goals. I think we're to some extent nationalizing or localizing the goals through looking at how we're best placed in each country to contribute to them.
Yeah, this is Lorraine. I agree with that. I would also say that the SDGs allow us to have a very tailored approach. Obviously, we're looking at the overall tapestry as a corporation, fitting that towards our progress towards our goals. But the SDGs is a great framework to really tailor to local needs, you know, getting the engagement within a way that's meaningful to the different countries' targets and then the business opportunities within those countries. So I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all, but I think the overall approach and branding with the SDGs is very, very helpful to businesses and leaders as they look to make progress in the various areas.
Great, thank you. There is a question from Louise Scott for Jessica again. You mentioned opening up the national reporting platform to corporates, and Louise is wondering what set of indicators they would use to do that, as government indicators don't really work for business. And she's wondering whether SDSN has done a little bit more thinking than UN Global Compact and GRI on this.
Hi, thanks for that question. Truth be told, I can't fully answer that question. It's being led by the chief statistician within the national government and the small, still existing SDG team within the Office of Budget Management Responsibility. They've been developing the national reporting platform. They're currently very engrossed in the process of trying to figure out how they align local city level indicators with the national indicators. But I know that there has been ongoing discussion about how to use complementary data from third parties. I think at the moment the plan is really to be using what business data is available that might complement official statistics. So rather than it being about business performance, it would be businesses being able to contribute relevant data. So take, for example, chambers of commerce, for example, often collect information on a number of women in economic employment and basic statistics like that can be really complementary where there isn't perhaps that data available with local government or national government. So at the moment, I think that's the approach they're taking. But in due course, of course, I think it would also be good to have some kind of national voluntary platform where companies could also report on their progress. With regards to the actual indicators, as you've said, WRI and WBSD have done some thinking on this already. We haven't got much further, unfortunately. I think it is an area that desperately needs a lot more thought. We have had some pilot projects working with different private companies and the chambers of commerce in Colombia, looking at how this can be done, and some information on that is available on our website, but it's very early stages. So I think it's a really good question, but yeah, we're still trying to figure that out. And I'd actually love to hear from WBCSD if there's anything else in the pipeline from them with regards to looking at the alignment of the existing corporate indicators and the SDG indicator set.
Thank you. Well, we have the SDG Compass, which outlines some more business relevant indicators. As you said, it's a collaboration with GRI and UN Global Compact. It's available online, and we continue to improve that as much as we can. I see there are a few more questions coming in, but we are actually running out of time. So I'll try to do my best to follow up on these questions after the webinar. I want to thank everybody for joining today, and I want to thank in particular our presenters. It was, I think, a very, very insightful webinar, unfortunately with some technical glitches. We will do our best to improve that. If you have questions, comments and suggestions, please do reach out to me. You see my contact details on the slide right now. We will try to share the slides as well from this webinar and make the recording available. Hopefully that did go along without technical glitches. We'll see. And again, so yeah, thank you very much everybody for joining. Sophie, Jessica, and Lorraine for your presentations, and we'll be in touch. And the next webinar on the SDGs is scheduled for March 6th, and we will look at, in particular, on SDG 6 sanitation and water and sanitation. So thanks again for joining, and I'm going to close now, but I will do my best to follow up on some of the questions that have come through after. So thanks a lot.
Thanks to you. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.